There's no reason to wait for these goal setting opportunities and opportunities to really start feeling better sooner rather than later. Right. So first of all, I'm really, really excited to be here. So thank you to Trusted and everybody involved. You guys have been amazing. I know we got derailed the first time we were going to do this, so I'm really, really excited that we made it happen. And it's perfect timing because we're kind of approaching the new year, and I know a lot of us are thinking of kind of what our goals are and our New Year's resolutions and whatnot. But I think honestly, there's no reason to wait for these goal setting opportunities and opportunities to really start feeling better sooner rather than later. So tonight we're going to really talk about reconnecting with who you are outside of healthcare, what brings you joy, how to really take action towards those things and feel like you're living a more balanced life. So thanks for being here. So first of all, congratulations, because it does take a lot to come to things like this. You could be doing anything with your time right now, and I'm really grateful that you're here. You're putting yourself first by being here, and you're taking action. And as we all know, if you don't take action, there's no changes. So this is kind of step one, and hopefully by the end of the call, you have one little takeaway that you can implement right away. And I have a fun little kind of freebie gift for you at the end that hopefully will be really exciting for you too. You can do the next slide. Thank you. So thanks for the intro. Just a little bit more about me. So I'm a neurology NP. I work pretty much full time. I did start my side hustle 3 years ago, which has really developed into this beautiful company, Selfcare Catalyst. It's really a community. It's all about connection and showing up for each other and really putting ourselves as humans first. Nurses, doctors, PT, whatever it is that you are in healthcare, those roles that we play second or third or fourth, depending on what you have going on in your life. We really here, and by we, it's really me, we're big believers that we need to put ourselves first, because when we don't put ourselves first, we really can't show up for the other people in our lives the way we want to. So through like mentorship, I have an amazing mentorship that's on cohort 10 now, which is hard to believe, but it is. Education through workshops like this and through free content on my website, just empowerment and putting content out on Instagram. Hopefully you guys are friends with me there, because you know I'm always in my DMs chatting with you guys. But really all of this is to help you reconnect with yourself, feel better, feel fulfilled, feel energized, so that you can have more fun and time and energy for that. I've been featured in a lot of different things. I love speaking, I love writing, I love connecting. And so if any of you ever need support, I'm just a DM or an email or anything away. So like I said, I do all of these things. My mentorship was kind of the original way to connect with people and support other healthcare humans. It's an incredible kind of mix of mindset work, inner work, with also really solid actionable tools that you can take to feel better at work, like boundary setting and advocating for yourself and communicating effectively, dealing with toxic people, which we know is very common, unfortunately, in healthcare. But I also do like business coaching and retreats and masterminds and all these things. And it's been really, really, really fulfilling for me. And I love connecting with you guys. Next slide. So tonight's objectives really is for you guys to connect. So I agree, reach out to each other in the DM, connect in the chat. We're really here to be together, and hopefully this is kind of an interactive experience for you. I am like, the whole point of this is to have fun. It's not going to be dry. It's not going to be hopefully a snooze fest. I really enjoy it to be, I really like it to be more interactive. So definitely, respond to questions that we propose to you in the chat. And if you have questions, put them in the chat, or things that you're like, yes, I love that point. Like, just drop it in the chat, because it's way more fun if we connect. We're here to really reconnect with you and put you at the top of your to-do list. Really rediscover your desires when it comes to joy activities outside of work and what your bliss list, so to speak, looks like. Explore what your unique fun print looks like. We all have things that we enjoy. It's not going to look the same for everybody here on the call. So what works for me may not work for you, but this is really to get your kind of gears turning as to what your ideal bliss list fun print activities look like for you. And as a side note, there will be a little, I don't like to call them workbooks because they're not work, fun books, if you will, that they're going to send to you guys with the recording. It's just a few pages of these really targeted, solid exercises that I really encourage you to try on for size. It'll help you kind of connect with that unique fun print. So you'll see that in the email, but I really encourage you to take a little look at it. And then you're going to learn the 3 non-negotiables for getting more time and energy for fun. Are you guys pumped? Put it in the chat. Sound good to people? Give me a heck yes or a hands up or something in the chat. We are ready. I love it. Awesome. Super pumped. Yay. Awesome. Okay, so early on, so my story, you know, if you've been following me on Instagram, you kind of know, yes, I love all this in the chat. Awesome. You're here, you're pumped. Let's go. So if you've been in my circle for a hot second, you know I'm a burnout survivor. You know that I always talk about the fact that there's life after burnout. This is not a permanent state of being. It can feel so overwhelming and just so defeating when you're in the thick of it. But I promise you, there is life after burnout. And early on in my role as a nurse, so before being a nurse practitioner, early on, I felt super strong. Like the megaphone on my imposter syndrome was like off the rails. Poor confidence. I really honestly didn't feel like I had an identity outside of my job. I was always thinking about work. When I was at work, I was thinking that I wasn't doing well enough. I wasn't good enough. All the things that I know a lot of you feel because I talk to a lot of you and I know that you feel that way. Comparison, like looking at people that you work with and thinking like, oh my goodness, they're doing so much better than me. But I was in a really super toxic workplace, which didn't help. So I had the imposter syndrome and I was new, plus the fact that I was in a really toxic work environment where they were kind of exploiting those things, and the fact that I really had no boundaries at all. I was like a yes, which, as we all know, is my way of, and I know a lot of us do this, is to get that validation, that external validation from other people. Hey, I'm great, you know, like, yeah, cool. They want me to help out. They want me to do things. But it just spiraled into overwhelm. It spiraled into crazy resentment. I honestly almost left nursing completely. I really debated it. I was like, if this is it, this is not for me. But honestly, I'm really glad I didn't, because now that I have these tools that I'm going to teach you, it honestly is just, it's a very fulfilling role and I absolutely love my job. So next slide. I chose action. And again, if we don't take action, nothing changes, right? I invested in myself through knowledge. I created space for me in my life. I really reconnected with what that identity was. Like, who the heck am I? I honestly, and like I said in the reel, kind of talking about this event, I really felt like I lost my identity in nursing school, you know, where I all of a sudden just felt this pull to constantly like do. And I really let myself get left behind. I worked with my own mentors. I had a therapist and all of this. And through taking action and putting myself out of my comfort zone over and over again, despite the fact that it was kind of hard to do that, my life transformed and I cultivated the tools that I now teach so that would never happen again. Because I was like, I am never getting to that place again. So I'm excited to teach you. So obviously I can't necessarily see all of you because you're off camera, but maybe even just in the chat, like, tell me, do you ever feel like you don't have enough time or energy for fun? Like, do you feel guilty about putting yourself first? Is that a hurdle for you? I mean, I think the answer is probably yes, since you're here, but I want to hear it from you. Is this something that you struggle with? Put it in the chat. Always. Yes. Hands up. Yes. Nancy's like, yes, queen. 100%. Yes, and yes. Yes. Yeah, it's really hard. And there's so many barriers that come up, and we're going to talk about some of those tonight. Great. See, and the beautiful thing about events like this and about these communities like Selfcare Catalyst and other people out there doing this work is you are not alone. Like, see the chat, you are not alone. There's other people out there in the world that feel the way you feel. It's completely normal. and it's not forever. And this is a very supportive, safe space. But like, I love the fact that you guys are putting yourself out there in the chat, because it really is important to see that you're not alone. So let's do the next slide. So having fun, we always think of like having fun is earned, or like, oh my God, I just have to do X, Y, Z and then I'll have fun. Because we have this like idea that we have to kind of be successful. But having fun is not a diversion from a successful life. It really is truly the pathway to it. And we all have this unique fun print, like I said before, which is really like what it is uniquely to us that makes us feel good, you know, feel energized, feel at ease. Sometimes just ease and calm is what we're looking for. So a fun print is really just those patterns of activities that you most enjoy. What makes you come alive? At the end of the day, when you're sitting on your porch and you're old and gray, and hopefully we'll all get there, what are you going to look back on as like how you measure your life? What will success really truly look like? What are your core values? And did you live up? Did you kind of honor those core values? Next slide. So one of the things I talk about a lot with my mentees is the idea of your to-do list versus your to-be list. So put in the chat. And again, I think we're going to see a little action. Who here loves to check those boxes? Like maybe you've even added something at the bottom of your to-do list just to check it off. I 100% have done that. Like, oh, I vacuumed too. Boom, like check, yes. Guilty, yep. Oh, and Kimberly just quit her job. Whoa, good work. Hopefully that was the right decision. I can't wait to hear your next steps. Type A for sure. Yeah, those boxes are so awesome. Make and remake lists many times a day, right? So my question to you is, where are you on your to-do list? You know, it's so easy to do the things on our to-do list. Like we always have things on our to-do list. We have clothes on, therefore we have laundry to do. Like it's never ending. There will never be a time where you're like, oh, phew, okay, to-do list is done. Good to go. No, it's not going to happen. So if we don't put ourselves on our to-do list somewhere, like generally speaking, it should be at the top, but let's just say anywhere on your to-do list, it's not going to happen. Like we're going to get left behind. It's just a fact. Next slide. So some of the blocks that we have when we're showing up for ourselves, and I'm just looking at the chat, take time to take care of myself. I get distracted with my to-do list. Totally. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So some of the blocks that we have when we're looking at creating more space and time and energy for fun, sometimes we don't like think of it as important. And sometimes that's like messaging that we've received since we were like little kids, like, you know, hey, you gotta, you know, do well in school, you gotta do, you gotta do this, you gotta check those boxes, you gotta like achieve. And achievement a lot of times is attached to the doing. It's not necessarily like those fulfilling activities and rest activities. Sometimes we think it's super silly. We think it's time consuming. We think it's unproductive because we have all these other things to do. Maybe we feel guilt or fear of just the thing in general, or like what other people will think, like, oh, if I take time to do this incredible class that I wanted to take, or this, you know, take time to take some time off from work, like, what if people think I'm lazy, or, you know, what have you? Self-conscious about our choices. Like maybe you've always wanted to take like a pottery class and you're like, that's super lame. I don't want to do that. People might think I'm weird. But it's like, girl, you do you, boo. Like try it. Try it on for size. See what you think. Or maybe perfectionism hits, which I'm sure many of you on this call you have a perfectionism streak, because I think many of us working in healthcare do. We're afraid we're going to do it wrong. We're afraid we're going to do self-care and rest wrong. So we don't want to do it because we're scared that like somehow we won't do it properly, like we won't rest well enough. So fun, truly, and I'm a believer in this, which is why I do what I do, is that when we create time for fun and joy and bliss and like create space for the things that make us happy, we're more productive, more focused, more relaxed. And burnout, definitely, this is one of the best burnout repellents out there, is to create time and energy for fun. There's a lot more benefits than risk. Oh, go ahead. You can go to the next slide. So as we all know, I mean, I'm sure you know the benefits of having fun, but are we practicing what we preach? So fun makes us feel differently. Like we know, like at the molecular level, like nerd alert here for a hot second, but it releases endorphins, those feel good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin. Like we feel those things when we do oxytocin, when we hug people. There's all these things that our body actually responds to when it comes to bliss activities. Focus. So it improves focus. It helps boost our creativity. Like who here, maybe you've like trying to write a paper and you're just like so strung out, you're home, you're like doing all the things, and then you're like, I'm just going to take a break and like go for a walk or something. That's when the thoughts flow. That's when the creativity comes, is because you're just letting loose, letting go, and creating space for that to happen, for the magic to happen, if you will. It decreases stress. It energizes us. We feel less resentful of the things that we have to do on our to-do list. It helps us connect, so with ourselves and with other humans, depending on what the activities are. And it helps boost our confidence, and it helps us achieve our goals. Like ultimately, when we create that time and energy for fun, we will feel more confident and we'll feel more energized to kind of tackle those goals that we have. Go to the next one. So your bliss list, we've talked about this, but what is it? So the bliss list, think about these things. And if you want to screenshot this, totally do it, because these are great things to journal on if you have time. But what are you happiest? What makes you feel at ease? And again, ease, like sometimes we think of like fun activities have to be like energizing, like go, like dance party situation. But sometimes it's just ease and contentment. And that's great. That's great. What makes you laugh? Like when was the last time you belly laughed? Like really, really laughed? Like what were you doing? Who were you with? What do you actually desire? What do you want to try? Is there something, like I've always wanted to take like a jewelry making class, like, like pound the metal and all the things. I have yet to do it. I will someday. But like, that's one of the things on my like fun bucket list. Like, what do you want to try? I had a mentee who really wanted to like do woodworking, and she literally took a woodworking class and built like a table. She was like, this is probably the most expensive table in the world, because she had to buy all the materials, but she was like, this is really fun. And I'm glad I put myself out there. What do you feel? What do you want to feel? And what is step one to get there? So setting the intention of, what we actually desire to feel, because it matters what you want to feel. And what are your hobbies? Like, what do you miss from childhood, and how can you leverage those things? So a lot of times, and this is one of the activities in the workbook that I sent along, thinking about the things that you used to like as a kid. Like many of us like love to craft, or, like we all did those like rainbow loom things. Like obviously you're not going to do that as an adult, but maybe if like you really love to craft, like doing something artistic, going to like one of those paint nights, or taking a pottery class, or doing some sort of like hands-on thing, or getting an adult coloring book. Like a lot of people like those. There's all these things that you can think of that are outside the box. If you love to climb trees as a kid, maybe you go to like a rock gym and try rock climbing and see how that feels. If you love to dance as a kid, like maybe you take Zumba classes or do something like that. There's so many things that you can think of outside the box if you really just sit and think about it. It's just that we don't typically sit and think about it. We're just go, and not creating that space to think of these things. So you don't have to do this right now. Maybe screenshot it, because not everybody probably has paper at this point. And this is actually in the workbook that I sent along as well. But just even right now, like think of something that you like to do. Like whether you like to run, read, spend time with friends, spend time with family, go out to eat, try new recipes, cook in the kitchen, whatever it is, play board games, whatever. You'll have a column with that in the workbook. So what that joy activity is, and then what it is that it makes you feel. Because again, it's important when you ask yourself that question of like, what do I feel? What do I want to feel? And how am I going to get there? The idea of like, what do I want to feel is really important. So let's say you do want to feel really energized. Like you're kind of feeling low energy. You're like, I really want to feel more energized. Like I just feel like a slug. This is not like feeling good to me. You can think of the activities on that list that equal, it makes me feel energized, or it makes me feel hyped up, or whatever. Because you want to make sure you're doing those activities that support whatever it is to get to that end goal. So when you're doing that, thinking of step one, not like, okay, well, I have all these things I have to get. I'm going to run, but I got to get my shoes. I got to get this. I got to get that. I got to like, whatever. Don't don't think of 1,000 steps. Think of step one, because when we think of 1,000 steps or we make it super overwhelming, we just don't do it. You know, if we have to like book an appointment or whatever, it becomes a stressor. It becomes something that there's resistance to. So we just abort the mission. So step one, make it super simple. And sometimes step one is laying your shoes out the night before, or booking that yoga class that you've wanted to try, or putting your book on your bedside table so you see it when it's time to go to bed. Create something where you're making the thing that you want to do, that you know is going to support whatever it is that you desire to feel. You want to make it super easy. You want to take the resistance out of it. And you want to decrease friction. You want to increase the friction between you and the things that derail you. So let's say like your phone, or, you know, watching TV, or, you know, slugging out on the couch. Like maybe, again, you have your thing that you want to do right when you walk in the house, or you don't even go home. You go to your exercise class before you even get in the house, or you meet your friend for dinner before you even go home. There's lots of ways to make it happen. It's just, again, being intentional and taking a pause to set those intentions. So definitely, I encourage you to do that exercise in the workbook. So when you do that in the workbook, make note of if there's anything that like just makes you smile, because a lot of times like there are these subtle messages that we send ourselves that cue us that this is something that's meaningful to us. So if there's something that you're like, ooh, like, yeah, I forgot about that. I really like to do that. Like make note of that, circle it, put a little star next to it, whatever it is, because maybe that's something that you should prioritize. Maybe you do miss it more than you think. You can go to the next slide. So I want you to ask yourself, because it is a barrier, creating space for you in your life. There are so many barriers, but what would you need to create more time for you? Or maybe what do you need to let go of? Maybe you can put in the chat. What would you need to create more time for yourself? Let's hear it. Is it your schedule? Is it energy? Is it time? Is it just communicating with the person that you live with? Like, yo, I need some time. Money? Yeah. Energy, feeling healthier, less doctor's appointments. Pay off debt, not feeling guilty about relaxing, not working night shift. Yep. Discipline and money. Money and energy, motivation, commitment. Yep. And for all the people saying money, I would encourage you to really think about the things that you could be doing that don't involve money. There's a lot of like free things in life that we don't take advantage of. Night shift is a lot. Yeah, it is a lot. Lack of energy. Limit commute time for sure. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing those. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So one of the things some of you said, but I mean, even commute time, like that's just time that we wish we were doing something else. One of the fun print essentials we're going to talk about is time. So one of our blocks, and believe me, we're all guilty of this, myself included, is I don't have the time. I don't have the time. Which is funny because like before I had kids, I was like, I never have time. And now I'm like, no, I like really don't have time now. But I still have the time. It's about how we prioritize our time. So thinking about what your priorities are, what your core values are, like what are you actually spending your time on? One of the things I do with my mentees is we do a time audit, which if you haven't done that, it's a very eye-opening experience, but it tells you where you're actually spending your time. Because a lot of times where you think you're spending your time is not where you're actually spending your time. So take a hard look at where your time is actually going and think about, okay, this is my reality at this time in my life. Where can I set boundaries? Where can I delegate, automate, eliminate, simplify? Decide you're worthy and let go of guilt, because a lot of times that is a huge part of it. And then intentionally planning out your week. So looking at, and there's plenty of tools for this. I can definitely share one with you if you're interested. When I send you information, I can send you my planning tool as well. But intentionally planning out your week is really, really helpful. And it doesn't have to be like the nitty gritty of hour by hour, like, all the details. It can just be like you're planning. Like for me, sometimes I just put it in my calendar as like D time, which is just time that I've allotted to myself or whatever that may be. And a lot of times that's just me going for a walk, or me, like I live in Maine. So we're lucky enough that, a lot of Maine is coastal. So I can drive to the ocean, and I love being near the ocean. It's one of my kind of it's where I relax. So it's something that I can kind of plan into my life. So creating space in your life is critical. And these are some of the strategies to find more time. You can go to the next slide. So the next is energy. So the other one I hear a lot is I'm just so exhausted all the time. I'm so tired. Whether you work night shift or not, let's be honest, like it's a grueling profession. Anyone working in healthcare, we work really, really hard. We bring work home. A lot of us work after hours or work shifts that are longer than we had hoped, or we take on extra shifts to help out. But a lot of times it just leads to us feeling tapped out. But here's the deal. We cannot sacrifice ourselves for others. So you can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, if you will. And that's where we're going to talk about like boundary setting and things like that. We can't let others exploit us and our good naturedness. So if you want to take the extra shift because you legit need the money and that's like feeling aligned for you, great. But if it's not feeling aligned and you feel like it's contributing to your burnout, or you wish you were doing something else with that time, then that's something to think about. It's really all about your bandwidth. So every action that we take is either a deposit or withdrawal. You can think of it like a bank. It's not like you drain your battery completely and then you're like boosting your battery. That's not life. Life is you're making a deposit, you're pulling out, you're putting in, you're pulling out. So like, your self-care, your exercise, nourishing your body, all those things make deposits into your bank. The withdrawals are things like work, toxic humans, having difficulty in your relationships. There's all these things that can kind of pull from your energy bank, but you've got to be tuned into it so you make sure that you're not overdrafting. So how do we get more energy? So step one is to look at where your energy vampires are. So energy vampires are the things in your life that are sucking the life out of you. A lot of them you may not have control over. A lot of them we do have control over, but it's bringing awareness to what those energy vampires are. You can go to the next slide. So here are some examples. So energy boosters, hobbies, connection, community, movement, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need a Peloton. You don't need an expensive gym membership. Moving your body is incredibly important. Eating healthful food. Again, if you can't afford like organic produce, there's other ways to be healthful. Making sure you're hydrating. Coffee's fine, but everything in moderation, obviously. You don't want to over caffeinate. Sleeping well, making sure that your sleep, you have a good nighttime routine. Supportive work environment, healthy colleague interactions are really important, and feeling fulfilled in your job. Energy vampires, obviously burnout, and that's like a whole nother topic in and of itself. I love the Peloton too. I'm just saying, like, they're expensive. So you don't need the fancy, but if you want a really solid, fancy, bougie bike, Peloton's awesome. You can also do the app on your phone without having like the Peloton, which is cheaper. So too much mindless scrolling on social media, toxic people, toxic work environments, bringing home like really, really hard days with you, not taking breaks at work, not like missing your lunch, not eating kind of snacks throughout the day, can really zap your energy levels. Poor work-life balance, obviously. I mean, work-life balance is kind of a misnomer. Like, obviously, it's more of like work-life integration, harmony. There's always like a give and take. It's never perfectly balanced. But overwork, too much booze, junk food, sedentary lifestyle definitely can zap your energy. And I'm sure we can all think of things that are unique to us. But of those energy vampires, put in the chat which energy vampire sticks out the most to you. Like, what do you feel like drains the most for you in your life? You can put it in the chat. Scrolling, yeah, for sure. Yeah, like late night scrolling, forget it. If I do that, the next day I'm feeling like a zombie. What else? Junk food for sure. Yeah, mindless scrolling, not eating. Junks, yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things like nobody's perfect. I mean, we're all like we're all guilty of eating food that's not good for us at times, like scrolling on our Instagram or whatever. Yeah, ex-husband, second. Exactly. So sometimes there's things in our life that you have control over and some you don't. Alcohol for sure. Social media, I'm seeing a lot. Junk food ruins your workouts. Yeah. So being tuned into those is really important because, again, you can set boundaries where you can and kind of eliminate things from your life as much as you can. So everything in moderation, but like for alcohol, for example, if you find that that's really something that is either problematic for you or you're just like, every time I drink alcohol, I feel horrible the next day and really low energy, either A, set limits, B, don't have it in your house so you don't drink it, C, put it in the back of your fridge so you don't see it. You know, create more friction between you and the things that that zap your energy. You can go to the next slide. So boundaries, again, if you followed me for 3 minutes, you know boundaries are my favorite, mostly because they saved my life. And I think, you know, a lot of times when you bring up boundaries, people freak out. You know, it's like boundaries, oh God, like they feel incredibly socially threatening in a lot of ways. But boundaries are so incredibly important. And if there's one thing you take away from this, if you set a few healthy boundaries in your life, it can really make or break and really help. It's like the best burnout repellent out there. Boundaries are just a limit. And maybe put in the chat, like when you think of boundaries, does it make you uncomfortable? Does it make you empowered? Like what do you, or you're like, what is a boundary? What are we even talking about? Like, tell me what comes up for you when you think of boundaries. I didn't even know what they were, to be honest, in the beginning. I was like, just work. do more. Yes, yeah, so saying no, being healthy, protecting your time, for sure. Those are great examples. So boundaries are really just a limit. And yeah, so boundaries at work could mean fighting against an unsafe ratio, like acuity, saying no and being okay with saying no to families. Yeah, hey, the holidays are coming up. I'm telling you, there's actually, in the workbook that you're getting, there's my website. There's a boundaries for the holidays freebie on my website. I encourage you, if you have like difficult family members, check it out. I have a few difficult family members, and these are like solid tools that'll help you. So boundaries are just a limit. And why do we have limits? Because we have limited resources. That is really it. They are a logical allocation of your resources. They are not an emotional exchange, even though they can often really feel that way. Let me go to the next slide. So if we don't put ourselves first, we are letting other people know that we can wait, that we will wait. And every time we put our own happiness first, you're just casting a vote for yourself. You're most empowered, most confident, your higher self. And that person that we stand up for, that we self-advocate for, that we set those limits for, are far better equipped to show up the way we want to show up. You know, like we're not irritable, we're not burned out, we're not feeling resentful. We are able to show up in the way we want to when we do these things for ourselves. You can do the next slide. So it's hard. Boundaries are really hard. In a sense, like once you have them down and you know what it looks like, you won't even think about it. Like, to be honest, like I literally don't even think about them anymore because you just do it. There's no friction there. You just know that you're worthy of it and you know what it looks like and you just communicate it. But when we set them, especially in the beginning, we have to kind of unlearn some things that we've been programmed for a really long time. And a lot of times, again, this is messaging that we've received from like childhood and, you know, prior jobs or toxic managers or whatever it is. So personally, we are unlearning that we are responsible for other people's thoughts, feelings, and experiences, right? So we're not responsible for those things. Also, it's my job to anticipate all of the above and be the smallest, most accommodating version of myself, right? So a lot of us have learned like, oh, come on, just do it. Like your parents, maybe when you were kids, like, oh, just do it. Come on. Like, don't make it weird. It's fine. Right. But no. Obedience and availability equal love and respect. I think a lot of us have that messaging. So by doing the thing that other people want us to do is how we get their love, how we get that validation from people that we work with, that we're in relationships with, whatever it may be. And if we restrict that, we view it as restricting that emotional exchange, which is just not the case. And that's actually like a very toxic thing, which is a whole nother conversation. So professionally, we're working through and unlearning the fact that availability and sacrifice are more admirable than doing your job well. So it is more admirable to do your job well. And you need to not think of the fact that you need to self-sacrifice and overwork and do all these things, do the more things, because eventually it will catch up with you and you will make a mistake and things will happen. We're unlearning that other people's time, job, deadlines are more important than your own. So maybe you're like, okay, yeah, I got all these things on my plate, but sure, yeah, I can do that. I'll do that patient, but you're like, dude, you have your whole list of patients you need to see, or you have your own stuff to do, you don't have to do that. But again, it feels very like socially threatening not to. So we are also unlearning that it's better to suffer silently and then rage quit 6 months later than to just have a hard conversation now. So a lot of times we'll just like put off and pocket all that animosity and resentment. And then we'll be like, do this explosion or some inappropriate conversation versus like when it comes up and it's inappropriate or it's not working, having that conversation that might be difficult, but super important. And then we're also unlearning that people may think we're lazy if we set a boundary. I think that's a pretty common one. Like, oh gosh, if I say no, people are going to think I'm lazy. I'm not a team player. But just because you think it doesn't mean it's true, right? Is it a feeling or is it a fact? Is a really important question to ask yourself. All right, you can go to the next slide. So our identity kind of gets tied into. So maybe you're hearing messages at work like, oh my God, you're so reliable. We can always rely on you. I don't know what I would do without you. Like that's actually pretty toxic because then it makes you feel like you always have to like do the things because you don't want to be the unreliable one. You want to keep feeling that validation from other people. So it's hard. Maybe you feel guilt when you're unavailable or exhaustion, resentment, the obligation to help others in the hopes that they'll help you. So like maybe when it's like, hey, will you cover this patient? And then you're like, oh, well, maybe, I'll cover her and then she'll cover me later kind of thing. But it can also look like overcommitment and like having too many things to do and perfectionism. Perfectionism is a big one. We all want to feel like we're doing well. All right, you can go to the next slide. Oh, yeah, good, thanks. So questions for getting started. Because again, I think for many of us, when boundaries are new or seems kind of scary, we want to keep it simple. So question one, and again, if you want to you're going to get the slides, so you don't have to screenshot it, but these are also great things to like journal on. So where are you feeling the most overwhelmed or you're feeling like spread too thin? What would a boundary look like in that case? Like, is there anything that you have control over? Who do you need to communicate with? Like, who do you have to have that difficult conversation with? And what fears, what blocks, what's coming up for you? Like, why hasn't this happened yet? And again, if you need more help, I'm here. And of course, Queen Brené, she has a great quote, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. And knowing that loving ourselves is more important. Okay, so this is another exercise. This is not in your workbook, so I would definitely encourage you to screenshot this. But if I embodied the energy of my higher self who prioritizes fun, play, and pleasure, who is confident and successful in all the ways that I desire. So hopefully, again, you're going to work through that fun book and you're going to see what your bliss list looks like, kind of what your fun print looks like. So what is one small step that you can take? What is step one? You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to see step one. What would I believe about myself? How would I speak to myself? Right? That negative self-talk. How would you like turn that around? How would you show up for yourself? What actions would you take to live your life authentically and joyfully? And a lot of times it doesn't have to be complicated. Simple does not mean unimportant. And it's really, really important to identify these little shifts that we can make because these little shifts add up to be huge, huge changes. And it's incredible how much your life will change when you show up for yourself in some way, shape, or form to self-nurture, show self-compassion, and work through some of that that negative self-talk and that fear that we're not good enough and that we're not enough as we show up in the world. Spoiler, you're enough. You're all enough. You can go to the next slide. So I want to hear from you. So I want you to share. Again, you can't raise your hand necessarily, or if you want, you can unmute yourself. I'm not sure how this is set up. You can put it in the chat too, whatever you want to do. But when you think about this, like hopefully you've been inspired to think of something maybe that you haven't done in a while, or that you have been curious about, or you know some way in which you've been kind of neglecting your whatever, fill in the blank. What is that thing you're going to make space for? Like, make that commitment to yourself in front of this small group of people. What is that commitment that you can make to yourself? And then maybe think, okay, well, what is step one to that? But just put in the chat or unmute, like, what are you going to make space for when it comes to your fun print?
I guess I can mention.
Yeah, go for it.
So I decided to make time for bettering myself professionally, and I'm going to apply to nurse anesthesia school.
Wow, amazing. That's huge.
So I think I'll have a better life balance and feel more valued.
Nice.
Because I'm also a nurse practitioner. I was working neurosurgery.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm in neuro. Good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, so it's feeling more in alignment for you, is what I'm hearing, which is huge.
It seems like the next right step.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So also I'm seeing in the chat, so creating woodworking, really want to learn how to paint, draw. And hey, so that one, I will tell you, so I have a mentee who's been working on that, and that perfectionism can kind of come through sometimes when you're learning a new skill. So just kind of embrace being new and remind yourself that, like, you were new at things before. You know, we were new when we started our job. We were new when we started nursing school or whatever school you went to. So just be tuned into that and kind of have fun with it. Be playful with it. Making space for picking up a sport, specifically pickleball. Pickleball apparently is all the rage. I'm here for this. Oh, what happened to my chat? There it is. New year, to take care of my own health, fitness, eating healthy. Good. Yeah, so again, start small, you know? Like, I think, you know, sometimes we pick these goals that are really, really big and seem just like intimidating, but like, what's like one little step that you can stay consistent with? Learn a tech skill, make time to go on walks, work out, read. Beautiful. Starting your own business, fabulous. I'm here for that. Like to spend time with my family more. Travel nursing and working nights kind of takes you away from family, for sure. I get that. Yeah, that's great. So these are all super attainable, and so just break it down. You know, think about, like, what is step one to make that happen? Like, who do you need to communicate with? What do you need to do? What commitments do you need to make to yourself? Do you need to schedule it on your calendar? Like, how do you actually create it to make sure it actually happens? Because again, looping back to the beginning of this talk, if we just focus on our to-do list, we're not going to have time for these other things. So we have to put these things on our to-do list. They are equally, if not more important than all those other stuff, all those other things that you need to do. All right, you can go to the next slide. So like I said, so the freebie that they're going to send out to you is this really great little workbook. It's super low friction. It's just a few pages. You can check it out. There's just a couple exercises for you to like hone in on what this looks like for you and just breaking it down to make it super easy. I'm also going to offer you guys like a self-care sort of burnout strategy session if you want to. I'm going to put a link in the chat, but it's basically just like a 15-30-minute call with me, totally free, no strings attached. I'm not going to sell you anything. I promise you that. It's really just to like hone in on what unique needs that you guys have. If you are interested, there's an application with just a couple questions so that I know like what you're dealing with, because I think we all have unique needs. But again, that is no strings attached, free for you, really just to kind of support you on your journey. So I'll put the form in the chat. I will reach out to you once I've looked at your form. You can go to the next slide. So questions. I would love to take any questions. Obviously, so a couple ways to find me. So selfcarecatalyst.com is my website. There's a ton of free content on there, various guides, workbooks, quizzes, all these things. All of them are free. So you can check that out on every topic under the sun. So for the person starting your own business, there's a side hustle PDF on there. There's boundary setting guides, confidence master classes, just tons of things. And like I said, the holiday boundaries freebie is solid if you have like toxic people at the holidays, which I think we all do. You can email me if there's questions that you guys had or you want to connect. I'm happy to chat with you. You can email me, and then on Instagram, I'm at Catalyst for Self-Care. There's tons of content there. And if you're looking for anything specific and you can't find it in the feed, just message me and I can find you, whatever you need. So yeah, so questions. So Natalie asked, so what were the first symptoms you noticed when I was experiencing burnout? So that's a great question. I'm not going to lie to you. It 100% took me by surprise. I, looking back, was definitely burned out far before I realized it. But at the time, what cued me into it was I was super, super irritable. I was not myself. I did not feel myself. I did not feel like I was kind in my relationship. My boyfriend at the time, my now husband. But it was like, I felt like my personality was shifting. And I was like, what is wrong with me? I cried a lot. I'm kind of a crier anyway, but I cried a lot. Generally speaking, like in the car on my way to work, I had a lot of like pre-shift anxiety. But looking back, I definitely think my first sign or symptom, if you will, of burnout was like resentment of the people that I was working with, my department. I felt very much like exploited. But I just kind of thought it was normal, to be honest. And that's really one of my reasons I do what I do now, is to educate on what to look out for, because I think it really can be hard to identify it if you don't know what to look out for. This is stuff they should teach us in school, to be honest with you. But I will say it was very much like the irritability and like personality, because I'm a nice person, and I felt like I was not being a nice person. Best advice for getting the job you want when there's a ton of applicants and you start fearing you're not good enough. Not totally really. No, so that's imposter syndrome, right? So confidence, imposter syndrome. So first of all, like I love, and this is something that I teach my clients, is looking at the evidence in your life that supports the more empowering story. So one of the things, so the idea of like not being enough, so I'm not enough, is a limiting belief. It's a belief that isn't serving you in any way, shape, or form, and it's just a belief. It's not a fact. It's just a thought that you have. So one of the ways you can work through it is thinking about, okay, what is the false reward that this thing is giving me? And by false reward, I mean it's like not helping you in any way, shape, or form. So maybe you don't feel you're good enough, so you don't apply for that job, or you don't put yourself out there, because of course you're not going to get the job if you don't apply for it, right? So a lot of times it actually does hold us back, these kinds of thought patterns. But one of the ways that you can work through it is thinking about what the more empowering story is. So obviously for this one, the more empowering version would be, I am enough. I am enough. And a lot of times we're like, girl, I don't believe that, right? Because the imposter is like, girl, you're not enough. So you got to think of the evidence in your life that supports the more empowering story. So think about the times in your life where you have gotten the job, or you did get the A on the test, or you did help that patient, or you did do something incredible, or you got really positive feedback. Because I'm telling you, if you really sit down and think about the ways in which you've achieved and succeeded and done the hard things in the past and come out on top, you'll be amazed. It's just we don't ever look at those. We always catastrophize, because that is just how we're wired a lot of the times. But if you rewire that belief and start to think about the ways in which you are enough, and you are smart, Like, how are you smart? Okay, well, you passed a ton of tests. You passed your boards. Like, you've done all these things. You were hired before. There's all these things that you can think of in your life that support the more empowering story. And you just have to like write it out. And it's going to be hard. It takes time to make those shifts, but it will help you continue to take those steps forward. And you've got to put yourself out there. The only way to boost your confidence is to do the things that are scary. Like the first time I ever talked on one of these events, I was terrified, like sweating profusely, like tremulous, like definitely was like, who the hell am I to be doing this? But you've got to show up. You've got to do the hard thing because that's the way you boost your confidence. And then looking at that evidence. What other things? Questions, blocks. You can definitely unmute yourself too if you want. We still have a couple more minutes. And Emily, I will say too, like one thing with like the job hunt, because the reality is we might not get the job because there are a lot of applicants out there and who knows what they're looking for. But one more empowering way to look at rejection, if it happens, is that it's not rejection, it's redirection. And that's a way more empowering way to look at it. I think back to the jobs I didn't get or the choices that I've made in my life. And I'm like, it's kind of okay,
I guess actually, because there was somebody else who just quit their job, I believe. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's the person you were just talking about, but I was fired from my very first job after almost 11 years of being a nurse. And
Mm-hmm.
it was, I was doing okay and everything with it, but I got a follow-up call from the union yesterday, and I was just like, of course, it like brought up all these feelings, and it happened like 3 weeks ago. But it was the reason I got fired is because I brought up unsafe staffing. And I was having other conversations because I'm really big about salary transparency because I feel like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's the way we grow, and they didn't like it.
No.
So, they put a blanket statement and they, pushed for a 24-hour termination, like because I was still in my probationary period is what they call it, like a 90-day probationary. And they just labeled me as I have behavioral problems. And I'm like, huh? Like, and I have never, ever been fired from a job. Like, and it hurts. It really hurts because you were trying to stand up for the other nurses,
Mm-hmm.
and submitting unsafe staffing forms. We were consistently getting 3 ICU patients at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I've never taken 3. I've only maxed out at 2. And it hurts. And I kind of liked what you said, like that it's not rejection, it's redirection.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that
Yeah.
that definitely helped. Because that was extremely toxic. And it was actually funny. I ran into someone at my per diem job today who worked at the same hospital, and she got through orientation 3 months, and then she left the ICU and transferred to another floor. She said it was just so toxic and all the nurses were so mean. So I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, and
so it's just,
toxic work environments can be really tricky. I mean, obviously we want to be employed and like fulfilled in our jobs, but like we don't want to lose our license. Like we want to be in environments
exactly.
that are supportive of us. Um,
Hmm.
and I think it's a huge red flag if you're at an institution that doesn't want to have those conversations.
Yeah. And
Right?
I
Like,
did have that powerful conversation, and, next day
yeah,
I get
yeah,
fired, and I'm
hard.
just like,
That's
that's,
really hard.
yeah,
That's really hard, but I really do believe that, you know, in environments like that, like it would be eventually a nightmare. Like
oh yeah, like it was
whether
pretty much who's going to break up with who first.
right, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and they just
It's
got to
just
it
unfortunate.
first.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
I think that that's a really empowering way to work through these emotions because
Yeah.
like it's really this was not a you problem. I mean, it was a you problem in the sense that you were having these
Yeah.
difficult conversations, but like it you were set up
It
to fail.
wasn't something that I did. They just didn't like,
Yeah, you were set up to fail. But
yes.
I mean, we have see the thing is like in the cult like we have to have these conversations because that is how we move the needle towards change.
Yes.
And it's like it is hard, and a lot of times, they are received well. Like we've had these conversations at my own job, and sure, you may feel resistance, or it may take like 1,000 years to see any change. Like you
Hmm.
feel like you're like a crazy person having the same conversations over and over and over and over again.
Hmm.
It's like, finding your allies, leveraging the people that have seats at the table as best you can, like getting involved
Yeah.
if you would desire that. But yeah, I mean, places like that, it's unfortunate, but
Yeah. It
you'll
just stunk because we're building a house 4 minutes away from the job. So I was like,
find.
so I was like, oh my God, this, work in my community. And I'm just like,
Yeah, but you don't want to
well,
be
but
in the house like sobbing into your tea. You want to be in your
true.
like house just like living your life and
Yeah,
living the
exactly. Maybe drive just a little bit further for happiness.
yeah. Yeah. So let's see. We have debating switching specialties because I feel burned out, but circling back to what you said, not about feeling confident and not knowing what I'm doing versus being comfortable where I am now, aka stagnant. Yeah. So whenever you like are thinking about making changes, I, very much encourage you to, and there's some content around this very idea on my Instagram, because it's important to like really know what your burnout triggers are and why are you leaving? Like, what do you actually desire? Because it's so easy to just like be like, I gotta get out of here. This is terrible. I feel horrible. Like, I gotta get out. But we have to have clarity around like, what is the problem? What do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job? Like, where do the issues actually lie? Is it the specialty? Is it the schedule? Is it the people? Like, what is it? Um, and then, taking those leaps and making those changes. Because you just don't want to like kind of knee jerk reaction and then end up in a similar situation or in a place that doesn't feel aligned either. And then you're kind of like, okay, well, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And history like repeats itself. So I'm happy to talk that through with you if you want. Yeah, it wasn't meant to be. Yeah, it's just unfortunate when it ends that way because it's just really unfortunate. Let's see. A trauma informed birth care webinar, and I have to jump. Oh, well, thanks for coming. All right, I think we're actually at time. Do we want to take, like, I could take one more question and then we'll wrap up. And I'm gonna put the form for the free coaching call in the chat again if you want it. It's just a few questions, and then I'll send you the link to set up a call. Anything else that people can think of? I'm really proud of you guys for showing up. I'm really grateful that you're here. And hopefully you have a couple nuggets that you can use this week. And maybe like after the call, just sit for a second and think, okay, like what's one thing that I can book for myself this week, even if it's just sitting and staring at a wall and taking some deep breaths. You're very welcome. And thanks to Trusted for hosting this. It's great that you show up for the community in such an amazing way.
Of course. So if we don't have any more questions, thank you to everyone who did ask their questions. It was a super insightful session, Diana. So thank you so much for all of the knowledge that you shared with us. I really learned a lot, like even though I'm not really in the healthcare profession, but I think that it really applies to everyone who's kind of experiencing that kind of burnout. So I'm excited to try out my new, explore my fun print and try out like different things that I was wanting to do but haven't made the time for. So I hope everybody has experienced or learned something today and have taken away some knowledge nuggets. And as a reminder, we will be sending out an email with the recording and the slides along with the freebie from Diana. So just be sure to keep an eye out. You'll also see a survey requesting feedback for the event, and we'd really appreciate it if you take the time to fill this out with any thoughts or ideas or any feedback that you may have. We want to continue improving and providing you guys with the best events possible. So this feedback really does help us a lot. And be sure to trust, if you haven't already, to check out the Trusted Circle on Facebook to stay connected with the community and stay updated on all of our upcoming events. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up, so we do hope to see you guys again soon. And again, thank you, Diana, and thank you for everyone who joined us.
Thanks, everybody.
And hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week.